The laminated route sheet was clipped to the sun visor with a plastic clothespin, same as every morning. 14 stops, 31 names, a loop that started at Meadow Creek subdivision at 6:42 a.m. and ended at Hargrove Elementary by 7:25. I'd driven that route for 9 years. I could do it blindfolded. I could do it asleep. Some mornings I practically did. My name is Pam Dorsey. I was 53 years old and I drove bus 19 for the Ridgecrest Unified School District. That morning, October 14th, I pulled out of the yard at 6:31 with the heater running because the overnight low had dipped into the 30s. The radio was on. Not music, talk radio. They'd been cycling through the same information for 3 days. Outbreaks in Memphis, a quarantine corridor outside of Baltimore. That footage from the Tucson hospital that everyone had seen, but nobody could explain. The governor had issued what he called a precautionary advisory, which meant nothing. Schools were still open. The district superintendent had sent an email at 11 p.m. the night before I'd read it on my phone while brushing my teeth, reminding drivers to follow standard health protocols and report any unusual student behavior to the front office upon arrival. Standard health protocols for what was happening out there. I remember thinking that was like advising someone to wear a seatbelt during an earthquake. But I got in the bus. That's what I want you to understand. I got in the bus because that's what I did. Not because I was brave, not because I'd assessed the situation and made a calculated decision. I got in because the alarm went off at 5:45, the coffee was ready by 5:52, and the bus was parked in Lot C at the district yard where it always was, and 31 children expected me to show up. That's not heroism, that's payroll. Stop 1, Meadow Creek, 6:42 a.m., 3 kids at this stop, the Alonzo twins, Marco and Sophia, 4th graders, and Jaylen Price, a quiet 1st grader who always sat in the 2nd row and held his backpack on his lap like a stuffed animal. Their parents were usually visible. Jaylen's mother stood on the porch with a travel mug. Mr. Alonzo walked the twins to the curb and waved. That morning, Jaylen was alone. He was standing at the stop sign with his backpack and his jacket zipped to his chin and his hands in his pockets. No mother on the porch. The house was dark. Not dark like no one had turned the lights on yet. Dark like the house had been dark for a while. I opened the door. "Morning, Jaylen." He climbed the steps without looking at me. That wasn't unusual. He was shy. He went to his seat, 2nd row, window side, set the backpack on his lap. Normal. But the twins weren't there. I waited 60 seconds, which was protocol, checked the mirror. No one coming down the sidewalk. The Alonzo house had lights on kitchen window. Upstairs hallway, but no one came to the door. No one came to the curb. I radioed dispatch. "Bus 19, stop 1, missing 2 riders, Alonzo, Marco, and Sophia." Carol's voice came back from the office, already tired. "Copy, 19. We've got 6 no-shows district-wide this morning. Proceed on route." 6 no-shows on a Monday. That number should have meant something to me. It didn't, or maybe it did, and I chose to let the routine carry me past it. The tires rolled forward. The brakes hissed at the next right turn, and in the rearview mirror, Jaylen Price sat perfectly still, staring at the seat back in front of him. I should tell you what I noticed and what I didn't. I noticed the stillness. 1st graders are never still. They kick their feet, they unzip and rezip their jackets. They talk to the window. Jaylen was motionless in a way that looked less like shyness and more like waiting. But I had 13 stops left and a route sheet that had never once been wrong about what the world expected from me. So I kept driving. Stop 2, Ridgecrest Terrace, 6:47 a.m. 4 kids here usually. This morning, 2. Bria Watkins, 3rd grade, and her older brother Deshaun, a 5th grader who thought sitting in the back row made him important. No sign of the Pack sisters, who were always early. Deshaun got on first. He looked at me, actually looked at me, which was rare, and said, "Miss Dorsey, my mom says if the school is closed when we get there, you bring us straight back home." "The school's open, Deshaun." She said, "If." Then if. Yes. He nodded and walked back to his seat. Bria followed, quieter than her brother, but watching everything. She stopped in the aisle next to Jaylen's row, looked at him for a moment, then moved on without sitting near him. I remember that. A 9-year-old chose a different seat without being able to explain why. Children know things before the rest of us find the language. Stops 3 through 5 gave me 11 more kids and took away whatever residual normalcy the morning had been faking. Stop 3, Haverford Court, had all its riders. 4 children, including Lily Cheng, a second grader who was crying when she got on. Not tantrum crying, quiet crying. She sat behind me in the first row and said, "My dog bit my dad last night and my dad went to the hospital and he didn't come back." I said, "I'm sure he's fine, sweetheart." She said, "My mom locked the dog in the garage and it's been making sounds all night." I didn't ask what kind of sounds. I should have. Instead, I said, "Your mom is handling it." And I pulled away from the curb and the next stop was waiting, and the route sheet didn't have a line item for dogs making sounds in garages. Stop 4, Pinehurst Lane, 2 riders instead of 5. Tyler Rourke, 4th grade, and Nadia Hassan, 3rd grade. Tyler's mother was at the curb, which was unusual. She normally watched from the living room window. She flagged me down before I opened the door. I cracked the window. "Morning. Are you still going to the school?" "Yes, ma'am." "Have you heard from the school? Have they said anything?" "They're open. I confirmed this morning." She looked at me like I'd told her something both true and useless. She knelt down and hugged Tyler for a long time, then let him go. He climbed on without a word. Nadia was already at the door, alone, no parent. She had a granola bar in one hand and her coat wasn't zipped. Stop 5, Briarwood Circle, 3 kids, all present. This was the Munoz stop, 3 siblings, grades 1 through 4. Their father drove a county maintenance truck and their mother worked nights at the FedEx distribution center. The oldest, Gabriel, age 10, got on and sat next to Deshaun in the back. The middle child, Anna, sat with Nadia. The youngest, Oscar, walked down the aisle looking for a seat and paused next to Jaylen. "Can I sit here?" Jaylen didn't respond. "Jaylen, can I sit here?" Nothing. Oscar shrugged and sat across the aisle. I watched this in the mirror while pretending to check the side clearance. Jaylen hadn't moved since Meadow Creek, hadn't shifted, hadn't adjusted his backpack, hadn't turned his head. His eyes were open and directed forward, but they weren't tracking anything. They were fixed. I should have pulled over. I should have walked back to his seat and taken his temperature and called dispatch and said, "Something is wrong with this child." I should have called his mother. I should have driven him back to his dark house and knocked on the door until someone answered or didn't answer. But the route sheet said stop 6 was at 6:59 and it was 6:58 and there were children standing at corners waiting for me, waiting specifically for me. Bus 19, Ms. Dorsey, the woman who always showed up. So I drove. The radio played continuously now. The talk station had shifted from discussion to relay. They were reading updates from the wire services. A second quarantine zone in Tennessee, National Guard deployments in 3 states, a CDC press conference scheduled for 9 a.m. Eastern. The host said, "We want to be clear, there is no recommendation to close schools at this time. Local authorities are monitoring." I turned it down, not off, down, because there were children on my bus and they didn't need to hear that word, quarantine. They didn't need that word inside this yellow metal box that was supposed to mean safety. Stop 6, Orchard Glen, 6:59 a.m., 1 rider instead of 3. Maya Torres, 5th grade. She got on, looked at the half-empty rows and said, "Where is everybody? Some kids are staying home today." Because of the news? Maybe. She sat in the middle of the bus and put her earbuds in, and I pulled away, and that was the last stop that felt even remotely like a school morning. Stop 7 was empty. Nobody at the sign. The house behind it had the front door open, not ajar, open, wide open with the screen door swinging in the breeze and the porch lights still on from the night before. I waited the 60 seconds. I radioed dispatch. No answer this time. Just dead air and the faint hum of an open carrier signal. I tried again. Bus 19, dispatch, stop 7, no riders, requesting confirmation on route status. Nothing. Stop 8 was empty too. I sat at that stop sign with the engine idling and 16 children behind me and the radio murmuring about Memphis and Baltimore, and I looked at the route sheet clipped to my visor and I counted the remaining stops. 6 more. 6 more corners where children might be standing, waiting for me, trusting that the bus would come because the bus had always come, because that was the one thing in their small, structured world that worked every single time. I put the bus in drive. Behind me in the second row, Jaylen Price made a sound. Not a word, not a cough, a low, wet exhalation, like something shifting inside him, like a settling, like whatever he'd been holding still was finished waiting. Bria Watkins, 4 rows back, looked up from her book. I should tell you about the bus itself because it mattered. It became the only thing that mattered. Bus 19 was a 2018 Bluebird Vision, 72 passenger capacity, diesel engine, manual transmission. It had a first aid kit behind my seat that contained Band-Aids, gauze, antiseptic wipes, 2 cold packs, and a pair of latex gloves. It had a fire extinguisher mounted near the rear emergency door. It had 12 windows on each side, all of which opened about 6 inches from the top. It had 1 entrance at the front and 1 emergency exit at the back. 2 ways in, 2 ways out. Those numbers governed everything that came after. By stop 9, I had 19 children on board. Stop 9 gave me 2 more of the Sullivan kids, Aiden and Chloe, whose mother actually ran down the sidewalk after them and pressed her hand flat against the bus door after they boarded. "Don't take them to the school," she said through the glass. "Please, something's wrong on Elm. There's people in the road and they're not right. Ma'am, I need you to step back from the door. They're walking, but they're not going anywhere. They're just standing in the street, and when the Hendersons drove past them," she stopped, reconsidered, looked at her children behind me. "Just don't go down Elm, please." "I won't go down Elm," I said. That was true. Elm Street wasn't on my route, but the school was 4 blocks from Elm, and whatever was in that road was 4 blocks from 31 children's classrooms. I pulled away. In the mirror, Aiden Sullivan sat next to his sister and held her hand. The route sheet listed stops 10 through 14 as a sequence through the Canterbury Heights neighborhood. Canterbury was newer construction, half-finished sidewalks, wide streets with no mature trees. You could see a long way in Canterbury. That visibility was about to matter. Stop 10. No riders. The house was closed and dark, but on the lawn, on the manicured green, HOA-approved lawn, there was a woman standing in bare feet in a nightgown. She wasn't at the bus stop. She was maybe 40 feet from the road, near the corner of the house, and she was facing the wall, just facing the brick wall of her own home. Her arms were at her sides and she was swaying slightly, a rhythm that didn't match the wind. I slowed. She didn't turn. The children on the passenger side pressed toward the windows. "Sit down," I said. Not loud, not panicked. The bus driver voice, the one that expects compliance and usually gets it. "Everyone sit down, please. Backs against the seats." They sat, most of them. Deshaun stood in the back and craned his neck. Gabriel Munoz was gripping the seat in front of him. Maya Torres had removed 1 earbud, and Jaylen Price, in the second row, turned his head for the first time since he'd boarded. He turned toward the window, toward the woman on the lawn, and I saw his face in the rearview mirror, and what I saw was recognition. Not fear, not curiosity. He recognized what she was doing. He understood it. I accelerated past stop 10. Stop 11 was 2 blocks further. Empty. But at the intersection beyond it, I could see the first real sign. A car had been stopped in the middle of the road, driver's door open, engine still running. The exhaust was visible in the cold air. Nobody inside, nobody near it. Just the open door and the idle engine and a child's car seat in the back, empty, the harness unbuckled. I stopped the bus, not because of the car, because the road ahead, my route, the only Route 2 stops 12, 13, 14, and then the school was blocked. Not by vehicles, by people. I counted 7, then 9. They were standing in the road the way the woman had stood on her lawn, facing nothing, facing each other, facing the asphalt, swaying in that rhythm. They were wearing what they'd been wearing when it happened to them, pajamas, a business suit, a FedEx uniform I recognized from the distribution center. One of them was holding a leash. There was no dog at the end of it. Ms. Dorsey, Maya's voice, high and careful. Miss Dorsey, are those people sick? I put the bus in park. I picked up the radio handset. Dispatch, bus 19. I have a road obstruction on Canterbury Boulevard between Ashford and 12th. Multiple pedestrians in the roadway. Requesting alternate route to Hargrove Elementary. Please respond. Static. Dispatch, this is bus 19. Please respond. The carrier signal hummed. Nobody was at the desk. Maybe nobody was in the building. I put the handset back in the cradle and looked at the route sheet, and the route sheet had nothing to say to me because the route sheet was made for a world where roads were open and schools were staffed and dispatch answered and children's mothers came to the door. 21 children on my bus, 6 stops remaining. One child in the second row who hadn't blinked in 30 minutes. I shifted into reverse. I had never taken bus 19 off route. 9 years, not once. The route was the job. The route was the contract between the district and the parents and me. It said, your child will be at this corner at this time, and I will be there, and I will take them to the school, and the school will take them from me, and you will come get them at 3:15, and everything will be the shape it is supposed to be. I had never broken that contract. Not in snow, not when my back went out and I drove hunched over the wheel with a heating pad between my spine and the seat. Not the morning after my mother's funeral, when I cried for the first 6 stops and then stopped because the kids were boarding and they needed the day to be normal. But I reversed away from Canterbury Boulevard and turned the bus around, and that contract was over. The question was immediate, and it was enormous. Where do I go? The school was northeast. Canterbury was between me and the school, and Canterbury was compromised. I could loop south and approach from Elm, but the Sullivan mother had said Elm was wrong. I could take the highway connector, Route 9, which would add 15 minutes, but bypass the residential grid entirely. Or I could stop, park the bus, call 911, wait. I tried 911 from my cell phone. It rang 19 times. I counted, 19 rings and then a click, and then silence and then a dial tone. I tried again, same result. I tried the district main office number, voicemail. I tried Hargrove Elementary directly. A recording. Hargrove Elementary is currently closed due to a weather-related event. Students should... Weather-related event. That was the template. That was the recording they triggered when they closed for snow days. Someone had activated the snow day protocol because there was no protocol for what was actually happening. The school was closed. I put the phone down and looked in the mirror. 21 faces. Some scared, some confused. Oscar Munoz was picking at a thread on his backpack. Lily Chung had stopped crying and was watching me with an expression I can only describe as waiting. They were all waiting. Not for information, not for a plan, for me, for the adult, for the person in the big seat at the front whose hands were on the wheel. Okay, I said. School's closed today. I'm going to take you all home. Deshawn's voice from the back. My mom said if the school was closed, bring us straight back. That's exactly what I'm doing. I reversed the route. Stop 9 first, the Sullivans. I dropped them at their door, and their mother would be there, and that would be 2 fewer children on this bus. I drove. The streets were quieter than they should have been at 7:15 on a Monday. Cars in driveways that should have been gone by now. A traffic light at Oak and Ridgecrest was cycling through its colors for nobody. I ran it on yellow. The bus felt enormous on the empty road, a bright yellow announcement of exactly where the living people were. 3 blocks from the Sullivan house, Bria Watkins said, Ms. Dorsey, Jaylen smells bad. I checked the mirror. Jaylen was in the same position. Backpack on lap, hands in his pockets. But Bria was right. I could smell it now too, faintly reaching the front of the bus through the heater vents. Sweet and wrong, like fruit that had turned but was still holding its shape. Jaylen, I said. Jaylen, honey, are you feeling okay? He didn't answer. He didn't move. Jaylen, I need you to look at me. His head rotated. Not turned rotated, smooth and mechanical, like a security camera adjusting its angle. His eyes found mine in the rearview mirror, and they were his eyes, brown and young, but the intelligence behind them had changed. It was patient. It was measuring distance. I looked back at the road. My hands were shaking on the wheel and I pressed them harder against the rubber grip and I drove. Bria, switch seats, please. Move back a few rows. Why? Because I asked you to. Go sit with Maya. She went. She went without arguing because children understand authority when authority sounds like it's not negotiating, and my voice at that moment was not negotiating. Jaylen watched her go. His head tracked her movement down the aisle with that same smooth rotation, then returned to center. The Sullivan house was ahead. I pulled to the curb. The front door was closed. No mother on the porch. I honked. The sound was enormous in the silence, the flat, industrial bleat of a school bus horn, and I watched the house for movement and saw none. Aiden, is your mom home? She was home when we left. Go knock on the door. Take your sister. If she doesn't answer in 1 minute, come back to the bus. He looked at me. He was 10 years old and he understood what I was asking him to do, and he understood that I was asking him to do it because I couldn't leave the bus. I couldn't leave 21 children alone on this bus with Jaylen Price sitting in the second row. Go on, I said. Quick. They went. They crossed the lawn. Aiden knocked. The door opened almost immediately. The mother had been watching from inside, and she pulled both children in and the door shut, and I saw the deadbolt turn through the sidelight window. 19 children. I pulled away. Next stop in reverse, the Munoz house at Briarwood Circle. I made it 4 blocks before I had to stop again. There was a man in the intersection at Briarwood and Pine. He was standing in the crosswalk, facing my bus, not swaying like the others, facing me directly. He was wearing a bathrobe and one shoe, and his head was tilted slightly to the right, and his mouth was open. Not screaming, not speaking, just open, like a door left unlatched. He started walking toward the bus, not fast, not lurching, walking, 1 foot after the other, deliberate and unhurried, a commuter's pace, a man going somewhere he fully intended to arrive. I hit the horn. He didn't flinch, didn't change speed, didn't change direction. I went around him. I took the bus up over the curb and across the corner of someone's lawn, and the children grabbed their seats as we jolted, and I heard Oscar Munoz yelp, and I heard something else too, a sound from the second row, from Jaylen, a low hum that wasn't a hum. It was a frequency, a vibration in his chest that I felt in the steering column. And the man in the bathrobe, in my side mirror, stopped walking toward where the bus had been and turned smoothly. That same camera motion toward where the bus was going. Like he'd been told. Like something had updated his heading. The Munoz house was dark. I pulled up, honked, waited. No response. Gabriel in the back was already standing. That's not right, he said. My mom's car is there. She should be home. Gabriel, sit down. She's home. Her car's in the driveway. She should be answering. I can see the car. Sit down. I need to go check. You need to sit down. He didn't sit down. He was 10 years old and his mother's car was in the driveway and the house was dark, and he knew what that meant the same way Bria knew to change seats, in the same way Jaylen's eyes knew how to track movement. Children know. They know before we admit. Gabriel, I unbuckled my seatbelt. I half turned in my seat. I looked at him directly, not through the mirror, but face to face, which I almost never did while the bus was in operation. I will come back. I will bring someone to check on your house. But right now, I need you to stay on this bus because your brother and your sister are on this bus and they need you here. Okay? His face did something complicated. It went from defiance to fear to a kind of hard resignation that no child should have to learn. He sat down. He put his arm around Oscar, who was 4 seats ahead of Anna, and he said, "Come here," and Oscar scrambled back to him. I pulled away from the Munoz house with 3 children whose mother's car was in the driveway and whose mother had not come to the door. The next logical stop was Briarwood, but Briarwood was behind me now, and the man in the intersection might still be there, and the route in reverse was becoming its own kind of maze. I made a decision. I wasn't going to go stop by stop. I wasn't going to try to deliver 19 children to 19 houses that might or might not have parents inside. I needed a single destination, somewhere staffed, somewhere with authority and walls and adults who were not me. The fire station. Station 7 on Ridgecrest Road. It was 3 miles south. It was brick, and it had bay doors that could seal, and it had people whose entire identity was built around the concept of emergency response. If anyone was still functioning inside the normal definition of that word, it would be them. I turned south on Ridgecrest Road and drove. The road was wide here. 4 lanes, a median, strip malls on both sides. It should have been filling up with commuter traffic by 7:30 on a Monday. It was empty. The parking lots were empty. The Starbucks drive-through lane had 3 cars in it, all stopped, none of them moving. One had its brake lights on. Another had the window down and a coffee cup on the pavement beneath the door, still upright, a brown splash staining the asphalt around it. Then I saw what Ridgecrest Road was actually offering me. 2 blocks ahead, a fire truck was parked diagonally across both southbound lanes. Not responding to a call. Parked, deliberately. A blockade. Behind it, I could see the orange cones. Someone had set up a checkpoint. I slowed, stopped, waited. A firefighter came around the side of the truck. He was wearing full turnout gear coat, pants, helmet, gloves, and he was carrying a Halligan bar, which is a pry tool, not a weapon. Except when someone holds it like a weapon. He approached my window. I opened it. I'm a school bus driver. I have 19 children on board. I was trying to reach Station 7. He looked past me into the bus. He scanned the rows. His eyes stopped on the second row. That kid, he said. What? Second row. Window seat. How long has he been like that? Like what? Still, my stomach dropped. Since he boarded, about 45 minutes. The firefighter's name was Reyes. I saw it on his coat. He looked at me and I saw the calculation happening in his face. The same math I'd been avoiding since Meadow Creek. The variables were 1 bus, 19 children, 1 child who was wrong, and no good options. Station 7 is gone, he said. What does that mean, gone? It means the crew responded to a mass casualty call at 4 a.m. and half of them didn't come back, and the other half locked themselves in the bunk room, and I'm out here because someone has to be. How many adults on that bus? Just me. He closed his eyes, opened them. The school? Closed. Police? Can't reach anyone. Where are you going? I said it before I'd fully thought it. I don't know. West, away from the residential grid. There's nothing east but neighborhoods, and we've already seen multiple. West is open. Highway 9 was clear as of an hour ago. There's a community center in Drayton, about 20 minutes out. County was talking about setting up an emergency shelter there last night. He paused. I don't know if they actually did. That's more than I have. He nodded. Then he looked at the second row again. You need to do something about that child. He's 6 years old. I understand that. I'm not putting a 6-year-old off this bus. Reyes looked at me with an expression that contained genuine compassion and absolute disagreement in equal measure. Ma'am, if he turns while you're driving and you're the only adult on board, then I'll handle it. How? I didn't answer because I didn't know. He looked at me for another moment, then stepped back and waved me through the gap between the fire truck and the median. As I passed, he said one more thing through the window. Keep them loud. Whatever's happening to the still ones, noise seems to, I don't know, slow it, confuse it. Keep those kids talking. I nodded. I pulled through the checkpoint and onto the open road, and I looked in the mirror and Jaylen Price was looking at me again with those brown, patient, ancient eyes. Behind us, Reyes stood alone next to a fire truck that was blocking a road that nobody was driving on. West on Highway 9, 2 lanes. Farmland on both sides, frost on the furrows. The sky was colorless, a flat November white, even though it was October. The bus felt too big for the road. I had to correct the steering twice when the right side tires caught the gravel shoulder. I told the children what I was doing. Not everything, not the full calculation, but enough. I said the school was closed, and we were going to a community center where there would be other adults and they would be able to reach their parents from there. I said it would take about 20 minutes. I said I needed everyone to stay in their seats and be good, and that I was proud of how well they were handling the morning. Deshawn said, Miss Dorsey, is it zombies? The bus went quiet. That word, that impossible, ridiculous movie poster word, and it came from a fifth grader's mouth like a fact he'd already accepted. I don't know what's happening, Deshaun. That's the truth. It looks like zombies. It looks like people who are sick. Let's focus on getting where we're going. Maya Torres, earbuds out now, said, "My mom texted me." She held up her phone. She said, "Stay with the bus." She said, "Stay with you." She lowered the phone. She said, "Don't come home." That sentence fell through the bus like a stone through water. Don't come home. A mother telling her child not to come home. I watched it hit each of them differently. Gabriel pulled Oscar closer. Lily Chung started crying again silently, her mouth shaped around sounds she wasn't making. Tyler Rourke put his forehead against the window and stared at the fields. "She's being smart," I said. "Your mom is being smart, Maya. She wants you somewhere safe, and right now, safe is moving." "She's right." Maya nodded, but she was 12 and she knew what I was doing, and she let me do it because the alternative was worse. Then Nadia Hassan, sitting 5 rows back, said, "Jaylen's talking." I checked the mirror. Jaylen's mouth was moving. No sound I could hear over the engine, but his lips were forming shapes. Not words exactly, repetitions. The same movement over and over, a syllable caught in a loop. "What's he saying?" Oscar asked, leaning forward. "Don't lean forward. Stay in your seat." "But what's he—" "Oscar, seat." I listened. I turned the heater fan down to its lowest setting and I listened. And I could hear it now, just barely, under the diesel vibration. A whisper that sounded like here, 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 repeated without breath, without pause, a location broadcast disguised as language. Reyes had said, "Keep them loud." "Okay," I said. "Who knows a song?" Silence. "Come on, anybody, any song, your favorite, the worst song you know, something from music class, anything." Lily Cheng, of all people, Lily, who had been crying since Haverford Court, said in a very small voice, "This land is your land." "Perfect, you start." She started, thin and wavering, and alone for about 4 words, and then Ana Munoz joined her, and then Chloe Sullivan. Number when Chloe was gone. I dropped the Sullivans. Bria picked it up, and then Tyler, mumbling, and then a few more, and the sound built, and it was ragged and off-key and absurd. 19 children singing a folk song on a school bus on Highway 9 while the world was ending, and I sang too. I sang because I was the adult, and if I sang, then it was allowed. Jaylen stopped whispering. His mouth closed. His body settled further into the seat, like something retreating, pulling back from a surface it had almost breached. The singing was doing something, not curing, not fixing, containing, like a lid pressed down on a pot that was about to boil. I drove and they sang and we were loud and alive inside that yellow box, and the field scrolled past and I thought, how long does this work? How long before what's happening to Jaylen doesn't care about noise anymore? The Drayton exit was 14 miles ahead. I did the math. 14 miles at 50 miles per hour. 17 minutes. 17 minutes of singing, of volume, of children being children so loudly that whatever was growing in a 6-year-old's body couldn't finish growing. They finished "This Land Is Your Land," and Deshaun started "Old Town Road," and everyone laughed, and even I smiled, and for about 90 seconds it felt like a field trip. Like the bus had a destination, and the destination had adults, and the adults had answers, and none of this was really happening. Then Jaylen stood up. He stood the way a child stands when they need to use the bathroom, abruptly, without warning, slightly awkward. But he didn't move toward the front. He didn't say anything. He stood in the aisle next to his seat and held his backpack against his chest, and his eyes swept the bus from front to back like a beam. "Jaylen, sit down, please." He didn't sit down. He took a step toward the back. "Jaylen." Another step. The singing had stopped. Every child on the bus was watching him. He walked down the aisle with his backpack clutched against him, and his footsteps were steady and deliberate, the walk of someone following a path they could see and no one else could. "Jaylen, stop walking. Sit down right now." He didn't stop. He passed Bria and Maya. He passed Tyler. He passed Nadia, who drew her knees up to let him by, her eyes wide. He passed Gabriel and Oscar and Anna, The three Munoz children pressed together like a single organism. He walked all the way to the back of the bus, to the last row, where Deshawn had been sitting alone and was now pressed against the side wall, as far from the aisle as geometry allowed. Jaylen sat down in the back row, center seat. He placed his backpack on his lap. He faced forward. And then he spoke. Clearly in his own voice, a 6-year-old's voice with a 6-year-old's slight lisp. A voice I'd heard say, "Good morning, Miss Dorsey," 100 times. He said, "Don't open the back door." Deshawn scrambled out of the back row so fast he tripped over his own feet and caught himself on a seat back. He moved up 5 rows and sat next to Gabriel and said nothing. His hands were shaking. I was driving at 50 miles per hour on a 2-lane highway, and a 6-year-old who was turning into something that wasn't a 6-year-old anymore had just voluntarily relocated himself to the point on the bus farthest from the other children. He had quarantined himself. He knew what was happening to him, and he had made a choice while he still could. "Don't open the back door." He was telling me, "I'm going to want out. I'm going to try. Don't let me." I drove. My vision blurred and I realized I was crying, and I blinked it away because the road was narrow and the children were watching, and the adult doesn't cry. The adult drives. The adult gets you where you're going. "Sing," I said. "Keep singing." They sang. Quieter now. More uncertain. But they sang. Deshawn started something I didn't recognize, and the others hummed along, and the sound filled the bus, and in the back row, Jaylen Price sat with his backpack on his lap, and his eyes open and his mouth closed. 11 miles to Drayton. The road was still empty. I passed a farmhouse with a pickup in the driveway and a light on inside the first sign of normal habitation I'd seen in miles, and I almost stopped, almost pulled in. But what would I say? I have 19 children and one of them is infected. Can we come inside? Who opens their door to that? I kept driving. At mile marker 14, I saw the first one on the highway, a man walking along the shoulder in the same direction I was traveling. He was wearing a high-visibility vest, the kind road workers wore, and he was walking with that deliberate pace, that commuter walk. He didn't look at the bus as I passed. At mile marker 16, there were 3 more, different shoulder, walking toward me this time, heading east, toward Ridgecrest. 2 women and a teenager. The teenager was barefoot on the asphalt, and I could see the soles of her feet as she walked, and they were wrong, dark, almost black, as if she'd been walking on hot coals. At mile marker 17, I saw the smoke. Drayton, ahead and slightly south, a column of dark smoke rising straight up in the windless air. Not a house fire, bigger, a structure fire or multiple structures, something central and significant. And the column was fat and black, and the kind of smoke that means fuel, means gasoline, means something was burning that wasn't supposed to burn. "Miss Dorsey?" Maya's voice. "Is that where we're going?" I didn't answer immediately. I was calculating. The community center in Drayton would be near the town center. The smoke was coming from the town center. The emergency shelter, if it had ever existed, was in or near whatever was burning. I had 2 choices. Drive into Drayton and find out. Or don't. "Change your plan," I said. "We're going to keep going west." "To where?" "There's a state park about 30 miles past Drayton. Visitor center, ranger station. We'll try there." I didn't know if the state park was open. I didn't know if it was staffed. I didn't know if 30 miles of fuel remained in the tank. But I knew that smoke meant Drayton was done. And I knew that stopping on the highway was not an option. And I knew that the only plan I had was momentum. Keep moving, keep the wheels turning, keep the yellow box rolling west. Tyler Rourke said, "I'm hungry." It was 8:15 in the morning, and not one of these children had eaten breakfast except Nadia with her granola bar. And I had nothing. No food on the bus, no water. A first aid kit with Band-Aids and a fire extinguisher, and 19 hungry children and a fuel gauge showing just under 3/4 of a tank. "We'll get food at the ranger station," I said. "What if there's no food there?" "Then we'll figure it out, but there will be. Rangers always have supplies." I was lying. I was lying to a 9-year-old because the truth, I don't know if there's anything at the ranger station. I don't know if there's anyone at the ranger station. I don't know if there's going to be a world past this highway was not a truth that helped anyone inside this bus. We passed the Drayton exit. The smoke was thick enough now that I could smell it through the heater vents, acrid and chemical. A fire engine was visible on the exit ramp, parked at an angle. No lights flashing, no crew visible. Another abandoned vehicle, another uniform without a person inside it. The bus rolled west. The children sang intermittently, songs dying out and restarting, the energy draining. In the back row, Jaylen was still. His stillness had a different quality now, less like waiting, more like listening. I checked the fuel gauge, checked the odometer, checked the mirror, 19 faces, 18 alive in the way I understood alive, and one alive in a way I was beginning to understand differently. 29 miles to the state park. At mile 22 from Ridgecrest, the bus radio crackled. Not dispatch, not any voice I recognized. A broadcast, automated, looping, the kind of emergency tone that preceded severe weather alerts, but with a message I had never been trained to hear. This is the Emergency Management Division. Shelter in place. Do not travel. Avoid contact with individuals displaying signs of behavioral disruption. Do not approach. Do not attempt communication. Shelter in place. Repeat. It looped. I let it play once and then turned it down because the children were listening, and do not attempt communication was a sentence that undid every comforting thing I told them about reaching their parents. Gabriel leaned forward. Ms. Dorsey, does that mean we shouldn't be driving? It means people at home should stay home. We're already on the road. We're going to keep going. But it said don't travel. Gabriel, I hear you. But stopping on the highway isn't safer than getting to a building with walls and a roof. Trust me on this one. He leaned back. He didn't trust me. He was 10 and his mother hadn't answered the door, and I was the only adult in his world, and trusting me was an act of surrender that cost him something every time he did it. Mile 24. The landscape changed. Farmland gave way to scrub, then to the first pine trees that signaled the transition into the state forest. The road narrowed slightly. The shoulders disappeared. The trees pressed in on both sides and the sky was visible only directly overhead, a bright strip between the canopy. I was watching the road and I almost missed it. Bria didn't. Ms. Dorsey, there's a car behind us. I checked the side mirror. A dark sedan, maybe a quarter-mile back, moving at our speed. Following. It had been there for at least a mile and I hadn't registered it because I'd been watching the road ahead, in the mirror inside the bus, toggling between Jaylen and the asphalt, and the outside mirrors had become background noise. The sedan was weaving slightly, not erratically, rhythmically, a slow sine wave across the center line and back, like the swaying of the people in the road, like the woman on the lawn. Is it following us, Bria again? It's just another car on the road. It's doing the same speed as us. She was right. I sped up to 55. The sedan matched. I slowed to 45. The sedan slowed. It maintained its distance with an exactness that was mechanical, relational, as if it were tethered to us by an invisible line. Everyone stay calm. Stay in your seats. I had no plan for this. The defensive driving training I'd received from the district that covered icy roads and railroad crossings and what to do if a student had a seizure. It did not cover a vehicle following your bus through a state forest during a behavioral pandemic. I accelerated to 60. The bus groaned. 60 was its upper range and the engine protested and the steering went loose and spongy. The sedan fell back slightly, then corrected, then matched. In the back row, Jaylen turned his head toward the rear window. The emergency door had a window at its center, and through it, if you craned, you could see the road behind you. Jaylen was looking through that window at the sedan, and his mouth was moving again. That same loop, here, here, here. He was broadcasting. The sedan wasn't following the bus, it was following him. Sing, I said, connected. Now, louder, everything you've got. Deshaun, bless him, started clapping. A rhythm, a beat, and then he was chanting something, a schoolyard call and response that I didn't know but the kids did, and they picked it up, and the bus filled with sound, genuine sound, a dozen young voices finding the pattern and hammering it, and it was rough and unrehearsed and beautiful. Jaylen's mouth stopped. In the mirror, the sedan began to drift. Its sine wave widened. It crossed the center line fully, then corrected, then crossed again, wider this time. It was losing the signal. Whatever Jaylen had been transmitting, the noise was breaking it up, scattering it, and the sedan was a receiver that had lost its station. It drifted further, crossed the shoulder, caught the gravel. I watched it slow and veer, and then it was in the ditch, gently, almost gracefully, nosing into the weeds at the tree line and stopping. In my mirror, it shrank and disappeared behind a curve. The children kept singing. I kept driving. Jaylen sat in the back row with his mouth closed and his eyes fixed on the seat back in front of him. And I thought, he did that on purpose. He stopped because they started. He's still in there. Part of him is still in there, and that part moved to the back of the bus and told me not to open the door because he knew what the rest of him was becoming. 6 years old. He'd been on my bus since kindergarten. His favorite color was green. He told me that once, unprompted, while boarding on a Tuesday. "Miss Dorsey, my favorite color is green." I'd said, "That's a good color, Jaylen." He'd smiled and gone to his seat. My favorite color is green. I was losing him. Whatever this was, it was finishing. And the child who liked green and held his backpack like a stuffed animal and stood at the bus stop alone because his mother couldn't come to the door anymore. That child was being replaced by something that broadcast locations and tracked movement and summoned dark sedans through pine forests. 20 miles to the state park. I drove. The entrance to Ridgecrest State Forest came up at mile 38. A brown wooden sign, the kind with routed letters painted white. A gravel pull-off, a metal gate across the access road, closed but not locked. The padlock was hanging open on the chain. I stopped the bus, looked at the gate, looked at the road behind me, empty. "Deshaun, I need you to do something for me." He came to the front of the bus. His face was drawn and older than it had been 2 hours ago. "What?" "I need you to get off the bus, open that gate, wait for me to drive through, and close it behind me. Can you do that?" He looked at the gate, looked at the trees, looked at the road. "What if there's someone out there?" "I'll be watching you the entire time. If anything happens, you run back to the bus. I won't move until you're on." He nodded. He went down the steps and into the cold morning air, and he jogged to the gate and swung it open, and I pulled the bus through, and he closed it and wrapped the chain and clicked the padlock shut and ran back and climbed aboard, and his hands were shaking but his face was set. "Thank you," I said. "Uh-huh." The access road wound uphill through dense pines. It was paved but narrow, barely bus width, branches scraping both sides. The bus lurched over frost heaves and potholes, and the children gripped their seats and nobody spoke. We climbed for about 2 miles, and then the trees opened, and there was the visitor center. A single-story building with a green metal roof, a parking lot with 4 spaces, all empty, a flagpole with a flag that nobody had taken down, a bulletin board under a wooden awning with trail maps and fire danger ratings, a composting toilet structure to the left, a picnic pavilion to the right. No vehicles, no people, no lights. I parked the bus in the lot, angled so I could see the access road. I set the parking brake. I left the engine running. "Everyone stay on the bus." I got off. The air was sharp and clean and smelled like pine and cold earth and nothing else. No smoke, no sweet wrongness. Just mountain air. I walked to the visitor center door, glass with a wooden frame. Hours posted, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Wednesday through Sunday. It was Monday, closed. On a normal Monday, closed. I tried the handle, locked. I cupped my hands and looked up through the glass. A counter, brochure racks, a display about local wildlife, a door behind the counter that probably led to offices, storage, possibly a break room. I went back to the bus and got the fire extinguisher. The glass broke cleanly. I reached through and turned the deadbolt, and I was inside. The break room had a mini fridge, a microwave, a cabinet with instant coffee, and a box of granola bars, and 2 sleeves of saltines and a jar of peanut butter. It also had a landline phone, a corded desk phone, the kind that didn't need power to work as long as the phone line was intact. I picked it up, dial tone. I nearly sobbed. I called 911. This time it rang 3 times and a voice answered. A real voice, a woman, hoarse and fast. 911, what is your emergency? My name is Pam Dorsey. I'm a school bus driver with Ridgecrest Unified. I have 19 children on a bus at the Ridgecrest State Forest Visitor Center off Highway 9. The school's closed. I can't reach any parents. We need help. A pause. Typing. Ridgecrest. You're in Ryland County? Yes. Ma'am. Ryland County Emergency Services are non-operational. National Guard is staging at Fort Braden. That's 40 miles south of your position. Can you get there? I have a school bus with 19 children. I have maybe a quarter tank of fuel. More typing. A long silence, then, hold on. I heard her speak to someone off the line. Muffled voices. She came back. There's a guard convoy moving north on Route 7. They're collecting civilians and transporting to the staging area. If you can get to the junction of Highway 9 and Route 7, they should pass through within the next 2 hours. That's about 15 miles east of here. That's the closest I've got. One of the children is infected. The longest silence yet. Infected how? He boarded that way. He's been on the bus all morning. He's still partially responsive. He moved himself to the back of the bus voluntarily. He's 6 years old. Ma'am, I need to be clear. If you arrive at the guard convoy with an infected individual on board, they will not let anyone off that bus. He's 6. I understand. They will not let anyone off the bus. Do you understand what I'm telling you? I understood. I brought the food to the bus. Granola bars, peanut butter, saltines, and a case of bottled water I found in a closet. The children ate. They ate the way children eat when they're truly hungry fast, without talking, without complaints about what it was or wasn't. I distributed the food myself, walking down the aisle. When I reached the back row, I knelt in the aisle and held out a granola bar. Jaylen, are you hungry? His eyes were different now. The brown was clouded, like a window frosted from the inside. But he looked at me. Not at the bus, not at the children. At me. I don't want it, he said, his voice. Still his voice, but thin, like it was coming from further away. Okay, there's water here if you want it. Miss Dorsey. Yes, Jaylen. I can hear them. I stayed very still. Hear who? Everybody, the ones outside. They're talking, but it's not with words. It's underneath. Like when you put your ear on the ground and you hear the train before it comes. What are they saying? His face tightened. Concentration. A child trying to translate something too large for his vocabulary. They want to know where we are. They keep asking. I was telling them. Before. I didn't mean to. It just comes out. But you stopped. The singing. When they sing, I can't hear the underneath. It gets too loud in here. He tapped his chest. But when it's quiet, it comes back. And I answer. I don't want to answer. Jaylen, listen to me. You walked to the back of this bus by yourself. You told me not to open the door. You're still you. Not for long. He said it the way a child says the sun will come up tomorrow. A fact observed. An inevitability absorbed without drama. 6 years old and the bravest person on that bus, including me. I stood up. I walked back to the front. I sat in my seat and I looked at the route sheet still clipped to the sun visor, and I thought about what the 911 operator had told me. The guard convoy was 15 miles east. They would take the children. They would save them. But they would not take Jaylen. They would look at him with his clouded eyes and his broadcasting chest, and they would not let anyone off the bus. 19 children locked inside a yellow box because of one. Or I could leave Jaylen here, at the visitor center, in a building with walls and a locked door and a phone. Leave him alone while I drove the other 18 children to the convoy, where they would be taken to safety, fed, processed, reunited eventually with parents who were still alive. Leave a 6-year-old alone in a state park while the world collapsed around him. That was the math. 18 lives weighed against one. A calculation so clean and obvious that any rational person would make it in an instant, and I sat in that driver's seat and I could not make it. I could not leave him. Not because I didn't understand the math, because the math was the thing that was wrong. The math was the infection's logic efficiency, Optimization, reduction of the compromise variable. If I started making that math, I was already lost. Deshaun was watching me from 5 rows back. He knew. The older kids knew. They'd been listening. They'd heard the phone call through the broken glass of the visitor center door, and they'd heard the silence when the operator told me what the guard would do. "We can't take him," Deshaun said, quietly, not cruelly, with the same fact-stating calm that Jaylen had used. "If we take him, nobody gets off." "I know. So what are we doing?" 18 faces, waiting. Not for a decision from a committee or a protocol from a manual or an email from a superintendent. From me, from Pam Dorsey, who drove bus 19 because the alarm went off at 5:45 and the coffee was ready by 5:52, and nobody had ever asked her to decide who gets saved and who gets left. I got off the bus, I walked to the back. I stood at the emergency door and I looked through the window at Jaylen, who was looking through the window at me. We were separated by 3 inches of glass and wire mesh, and whatever distance existed between what he had been and what he was becoming. I opened the emergency door. He didn't move. He sat there with his backpack on his lap, and his clouded eyes on mine, and the cold mountain air rushed in, and the children at the front gasped at the sound of the alarm, the emergency door alarm, a shrill electronic scream that said, "Something is open that should not be open." "Jaylen, I need you to come with me." He shook his head. "I told you not to open it." "I know what you told me. I'm asking you to come with me." "Why?" "Because I'm going to take you inside the building. There's a room with a lock. There's a phone. I'm going to take the other kids to get help, and then I'm going to come back for you." "I'm going to come back." "You won't." "I will." "You don't have enough gas." He was right. I probably didn't. The bus got about 7 miles to the gallon, and the gauge was hovering just above the quarter mark, and the round trip to Route 7 and back was 30 miles, and that was more than the math supported. The math again. Always the math. "Then someone else will come. I'll tell the guard. I'll give them this location." "They won't come for me." "Jaylen, it's okay, Ms. Dorsey." He stood up. He picked up his backpack. He walked to the emergency door, and he stepped down 2 high steps for a small child. And he stood on the gravel parking lot in the October cold, and he looked up at me, and for a moment he was just Jaylen. Just a boy at a bus stop on a Tuesday morning, telling me his favorite color. I walked him to the visitor center. I brought a blanket from the first aid kit. I brought the remaining water bottles. I showed him the phone. I showed him the lock on the break room door. "Stay in this room. Lock the door. Don't go outside." He sat on the floor with his backpack and the blanket, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I said, "Jaylen, I want you to remember something. You moved to the back of the bus by yourself. Nobody told you to. You did that. Whatever happens, you did that." He nodded. His eyes were very clouded now, the brown almost gone, but he nodded. I closed the door. I heard the lock click from inside. I stood in the hallway of the visitor center with my hand on the doorframe, and I listened to the silence on the other side, and then I turned and walked back to the bus. 18 children, 18 faces. I pulled the emergency door shut. I silenced the alarm. I walked up the aisle to my seat, and I sat down and I put my hands on the wheel, and my hands were steady. They were the steadiest they'd been all morning. I put the bus in drive. The access road back down to Highway 9 felt longer than it had going up. Every frost heave, every pothole, every branch scraping the roof was amplified by the absence in the back row. The children knew. They knew what I'd done, and they were silent in a way that was different from fear. It was the silence of witnesses, of people who have seen a decision made and are still measuring its weight. I turned east on Highway 9, back toward Ridgecrest, but only for 15 miles, to the Route 7 junction. The operator had said 2 hours. It was 9:40 a.m. If the convoy was on schedule, if schedule still existed, I had time. The road was not empty anymore. They were in the trees, on both sides, standing among the pines like they'd grown there. Not on the road, not blocking my path, just present. Dozens of them, visible between the trunks, faces turned toward the bus, swaying in that rhythm I'd seen since Canterbury. They didn't move toward us. They watched. They tracked. The bus passed through them like a ship through a harbor of still boats, and every head turned as we went. "Don't look at them," I said. "Eyes forward. Look at the seat in front of you. Look at me." But the children looked. Of course they looked. They were children, and the world was showing them something it had never shown them before, and looking was what humans did before they understood that some things look back. The figures in the trees didn't follow. They stayed at their stations, swaying, and I drove, and the pines scrolled past, and after a mile the trees were empty again, and the road was just a road. Maya said, "They knew we were coming." I didn't answer because she was right. Jaylen told them. Before, when he was doing the thing, he told them where we were going. We changed direction. We're going east now. He doesn't know that. What if he does? I drove faster. 55. The bus protested but held. The fuel gauge dipped below a quarter, and I watched it like I was watching an hourglass. Mile markers counted down. The junction appeared on a road sign. Route 7, 4 miles, then 2 miles, then 1. And then I saw the junction, a wide intersection with a gas station on one corner and a feed store on the other. And in the parking lot of the gas station, there were 3 military vehicles. Humvees, olive drab, a transport truck with a canvas cover. Soldiers. 4 of them visible, in full gear, weapons slung. They were standing near the lead vehicle looking south down Route 7, and when the school bus crested the rise and entered the junction, every head turned. I pulled into the gas station lot. I set the brake. I opened my door, and I stepped down, and my legs were shaking so badly I had to hold the handrail. A soldier approached. Younger than the situation. He had sergeant's stripes and a name tape that read, Colvin, and he looked at the bus and then at me. "How many?" 18 children. Just me. I'm their bus driver. He looked at the bus, at the windows, at the faces pressed against the glass. "Any infected?" "No, I had one. I left him at the State Forest Visitor Center. He's locked in the break room." Colvin's expression didn't change. He radioed someone, spoke in terms I didn't fully catch. Then, "We can take the children. We're transporting to Fort Braden. There's processing there, medical, communications. Parents can be contacted." "Okay. I need you to understand, once they're off the bus, they're in our custody. We screen everyone. Anyone showing signs gets separated." "They're clean. I've been with them all morning. They're clean." He nodded. Not because he believed me, because screening would happen regardless of what I said. I got back on the bus. I turned to face them. 18 faces, some crying now, some not. Deshaun, Gabriel, Oscar, Anna, Bria, Maya, Tyler, Nadia, Lily. The others whose names I knew as well as I knew the route. Names I'd read from a sheet every morning for months or years. Names that meant a seat number and a stop number and a small person who trusted me to get them where they were going. There are soldiers outside. They're going to take you to a safe place. There will be food and beds and phones. You can call your families. "Are you coming?" Lily asked. "I'm going to stay with the bus." "Why?" "Because there's a boy in a visitor center 30 miles west of here who locked himself in a room because I told him to. Because the fuel gauge says I probably can't make it back, but probably isn't the same as can't. Because the route sheet on my visor has his name on it and I haven't finished my route. Because there's something I still need to do." They got off one at a time. I stood at the door and I said each name as they stepped down. Deshaun Watkins, Bria Watkins, Gabriel Munoz, Ana Munoz, Oscar Munoz, Maya Torres, Tyler Rourke, Nadia Hassan, Lily Cheng. All of them, every name. Some of them hugged me. I am not the kind of person that children hug. I was the bus driver, the background authority, the person who said, "Sit down and keep your hands inside the window." But they hugged me, and I let them. And I held each one for exactly as long as they needed, and no longer because there were more names to call. Gabriel stopped at the bottom of the steps. "You're going back for Jaylen." "Yes. You might not make it." "I might not." "That's stupid." "Probably." He looked at me with those 10-year-old eyes that had aged past 20 this morning. "Tell him I'm sorry I didn't talk to him." On the bus, he was sitting there the whole time and nobody talked to him. I'll tell him. He walked toward the soldiers. Oscar was waiting for him. Gabriel took his brother's hand, and they walked together, and they didn't look back. Sergeant Colvin came to my window. The visitor center is 30 miles. You've got maybe 5-6 gallons in that tank. That's about right. That's not enough. It's what I have. Ma'am, we can send someone. When we reach Fort Braden, I can request a team. How long? He hesitated. 12 hours, maybe more. We're stretched across 4 counties. He's 6 years old and he's alone and he's turning and he's scared, and I told him I'd come back. Colvin looked at me for a long time. Then he walked to the transport truck and came back with a 5-gallon fuel can. Military diesel. He set it next to my front tire. It's not enough for the round trip. It's enough to get you there. Thank you. There's nothing at that visitor center for you after this. No extraction, no support. You understand that? I understand. He stepped back. I climbed down, poured the diesel into the bus tank, climbed back up, and started the engine. The gauge lifted to just below half. 30 miles to the visitor center. Maybe 35 miles of fuel. A one-way trip with a margin so thin it was essentially a decision to stay. I pulled out of the gas station. I turned west on Highway 9. In the side mirror, the convoy was loading 18 children into a military transport, and the yellow bus moved away from them into the empty road, and the road was mine. The drive back was different. The figures in the trees were gone. The highway was truly empty. No walkers, no sedans, no movement. Just the road and the pines and the white sky and the sound of the engine and my own breathing. I drove at exactly 50 miles per hour. Not faster because fuel efficiency mattered. Not slower because time mattered. 50 was the balance point between the two, and I held it the way I'd held the wheel all morning with both hands, 10 and 2, the way they taught you. The route sheet was still on the visor. I pulled it down and set it on the passenger seat, face up. 14 stops, 31 names. Jaylen Price was the first name on the list. Stop 1, Meadow Creek. Seat 2, window side. I hadn't finished my route. That was the thing that wouldn't leave me alone. The thing that was louder than the fear and the uncertainty in the fuel gauge. I hadn't finished. The route said 31 names, and I'd picked up 21 and delivered 18 to safety and left 1 in a break room in a state park, and 2, the Alonzo twins, had never appeared at all. And the 10 I'd never reached, the names at stops 12, 13, 14, the children who might have been standing at their corners waiting for a bus that never came. I couldn't think about them without my chest compressing, so I didn't think about them. I drove. The state forest entrance appeared. The gate was still chained, still padlocked from when Deshawn had closed it. I stopped the bus. I got out. The air was cold and still, and the forest was silent. Not peaceful, not calm. Silent the way a room is silent when someone is listening. I opened the padlock, swung the gate, drove through, left the gate open behind me because if I needed to leave fast, I needed to leave fast. The access road climbed through the pines. The bus groaned on the grade. The engine temperature was higher than I liked. The fuel gauge dropped visibly on the incline. The visitor center appeared. Green roof, empty lot, flag on the pole, bulletin board. Everything exactly as I'd left it, except for one thing. The front door was open. I'd closed it. I'd left through the front door and pulled it shut. It was open now. Not broken, not forced. Open the way Jaylen's house had been dark. Like whatever was inside had decided to leave and had remembered how doors worked. I parked the bus. I took the fire extinguisher. I walked to the door. Jaylen? The visitor center was dim inside. The display about local wildlife, the brochure racks, the counter, the hallway to the break room. The break room door was open too. I walked in. The blanket was on the floor. The water bottles were untouched. The phone was off the hook, hanging by its cord, and from the earpiece I could hear a sound, not a dial tone, not a voice. That frequency, that vibration Jaylen had made on the bus, the one I'd felt in the steering column. It was coming through the phone line now, broadcast on copper wire to whoever was listening. Jaylen was gone. I stood in that break room, and I looked at the blanket and the water and the phone, and I understood that he had held on as long as he could. He had locked the door and stayed, and then whatever was growing inside him had finished growing, and the boy who liked green had walked out of the room and opened the door and gone into the pines. I picked up the phone. I listened to the frequency for 3 seconds. Then I hung it up. I walked back through the visitor center. I stood in the doorway and looked at the trees. They were thick and dark, and they went on for miles in every direction. And somewhere in them was a 6-year-old boy who was not a 6-year-old boy anymore. And I could look for him, or I could accept that looking was not the same as finding, and finding was not the same as saving. I walked back to the bus. I sat in my seat. I looked at the road sheet on the passenger seat, and I picked it up and I clipped it back to the visor. The fuel gauge was nearly empty. Enough to get back down the access road. Maybe enough to reach Highway 9. Not enough to go anywhere meaningful after that. I started the engine. I drove down the access road. I reached the highway. I turned west, not east, not back, but forward into territory I didn't know, towards whatever was next. And I drove until the needle touched empty, and the engine coughed, and I pulled to the shoulder, and the bus was still. I sat there. I sat in the driver's seat of bus 19 on the shoulder of Highway 9 in the silence of a world that had stopped working, and I kept my hands on the wheel because that was where they belonged. I stayed with the bus. I need you to know that. I didn't walk into the woods. I didn't flag down whatever might come along the highway. I stayed in my seat because somewhere, in some operations office that might still be functioning, Bus 19 was listed as active, and its last known position was this road, and if anyone came looking, they would look for a yellow bus on a highway shoulder, and they would find me in it. I waited 3 hours. I ate the last sleeve of saltines I'd kept for myself. I drank half a bottle of water. I watched the road in both directions and nothing came. No vehicles, no walkers, no figures in the trees. At 2:47 p.m., a pickup truck appeared from the west. It slowed, it stopped. A woman got out. She was maybe 60, wearing a canvas jacket and work boots, and she had a shotgun, and she looked at the bus and she looked at me through the windshield and she said, "How many?" "Just me." "Where are the kids?" "Safe. I got them to the guard." She studied me. Whatever she was looking for, she found it. "I've got a farmhouse 11 miles west. Generator, well water, CB radio. Can't promise more than that." "That's more than I have." She drove. I rode. The bus shrank in the side mirror and then it was gone. But I can still see it. Every morning when whatever passes for an alarm goes off in whatever room I'm sleeping in, I see it. Yellow and square and ordinary and waiting in Lot C for a woman who always showed up. 14 stops, 31 names, and one child in the second row who told me his favorite color was green and who walked to the back of the bus because he didn't want to hurt anyone. I think about him in the trees. I think about him every day. I didn't save him. I want to be clear about that. I went back and he was gone and I didn't save him. But I went back. That's the thing I carry. Not the guilt, not the math. The fact that I went back, the bus had nothing left and I had nothing left. And I went back because I said I would, and because his name was on my road sheet, and because the bus always comes, even when the world ends, even when there's nothing left in the tank.